when I was younger, I always thought that the Elvis movie, Lovin' You, came later in his filmography. I didn't realize it was only the second movie, following on from Love Me Tender, which of course we spoke about in the last video. The film was originally going to be called The Reno Brothers, but they brought Elvis in. Elvis initially didn't think he was going to sing any songs in that, but it was too good of an opportunity to miss, particularly as Elvis was huge at that time. It was the middle of Presley mania, and so the film was retitled Love Me Tender and featured Elvis doing several songs. We talked about that movie in the previous video, which you will find right at the beginning of the King of Stage and Screen playlist. But the second movie, Lovin' You, as I said, I always thought it came later in the filmography, and that was because it was in glorious VistaVision, in colour, whereas Elvis's third and fourth movie, that is J-Love's Rock and King Creole. King Creole, incidentally, in many people's opinion, Elvis's best movie, and probably in my opinion, I probably would share that opinion, were in black and white. Why was that? Welcome to the Tainted Tavern. Coming to the Tainted Tavern, come sit a. Okay, well, I've made some notes here in order that I'll sound like someone who knows what he's talking about in doing this review. But Lovin' You was released in 1957. It was another massive box office success, proving that Elvis's previous role in Love Me Tender wasn't a fluke and that Elvis could demand box office in high numbers. Now, where the previous movie, as I said, Love Me Tender, wasn't intended originally to be an Elvis Presley movie. It was actually a post-Civil War Western, a melodrama set in post-Civil War America, and it was originally going to be called The Reno Brothers. But when Elvis was brought on board, we are talking of a period now of Elvis's initial superstardom, where his stardom had gone from being just largely a product of the South. It had spread out all over America and was reaching its tentacles out now around the world. Elvis was becoming a phenomenon the likes of which had never been seen. He was getting to be bigger to this stage than, say, someone like Frank Sinatra, who had been the previous teeny bopper king. And so, Lovin' You, made in 1957, was directed and written by Al Cantor. Now, Al Cantor wasn't sure initially of doing an Elvis movie, and this was going to be an Elvis movie. It was going to be geared towards Presley's strength. It was going to be a music picture, whereas the previous movie, Love Me Tender, was a Western in which they shoehorned the music in. This was going to be a movie. So the music in this does work much better than it did in the previous movie. The story is built around Elvis's ability to hold a tune and his ability to perform. So he did a screen test with Elvis. As I say, he was reluctant at first. He's watched a screening of Love Me Tender and thought, whilst Elvis's performance was charismatic, there was something amateur about it, and he thought, okay, Elvis was a co-star in that anyway. He didn't carry that movie. Could Elvis carry a movie on his own? Al Cantor had done a screen test with him, and he reportedly said something like, wow, that son of a bitch just jumps off the screen, the camera loves him. And so in order to gear the script he was working on towards Elvis's strength, he went to see Elvis perform at the Louisiana A-Ride, and he saw several of those performances, and he was struck by the effect that Elvis had on the audience, particularly the effect he had on the younger female member of the audiences. And in the musical numbers in Lovin' You, which basically Elvis plays a character called Deke Rivers, who is a thinly veiled version of himself, and the story is of Deke Rivers, that is Elvis's rise from and being an unknown nobody to massive stardom. It's very thinly veiled on the real Elvis Presley story. Although Deke Rivers is an orphan, there are a lot of similarities between the characters and the real Elvis Presley. But Elvis gets to perform some brilliant songs in this film. Mean Woman Blues, Teddy Bear. Teddy Bear's a funny one for me because when I was a kid, that was an Elvis Presley signature song, so everyone knew the song Teddy Bear. But the backing on that, which I believe goes bump banana, I always hear that as hot banana, Hot Banana. So even now when I hear this song, I'm watching this movie last night and Elvis starts performing Teddy Bear, the backing I'm hearing is Hot Banana, Hot Banana. It actually improves the song somewhere, so perhaps I should get a little bit of a copyright in that and they could change the lyrics. Other songs are Hot Dog, Lonesome Cowboy, I Got a Woman, Loving You. Loving You is presented in two versions. You've got the proper slow ballad style version, and right at the beginning of the movie you've got a more up-tempo version. I actually prefer the up-tempo version. Probably my favourite song throughout the entire movie is Elvis's performance of Lonesome Cowboy. I love the plaintive way that he performs that song. Now, his co-star is the wonderful Elizabeth Scott, who plays a character called Glenda, who becomes Elvis's manager. And she's a very, very thinly veiled version of Colonel Tom Parker. A prettier version of Colonel Tom Parker, maybe, but still a version of Colonel Tom Parker. There's a section in the film where it's discovered that she's actually taking 50% of Deke Rivers, that's Elvis's earnings, which is something that the Colonel did in real life. Another co-star is Dolores Hart, who plays Elvis's love interest, Susan. And she plays it in such a virginal way, her character, that she may as well have joined a convent, which is something the actress Dolores Hart would do for real after co-starring again with Elvis in King Creole, his fourth movie. But we'll talk about that because that's an interesting story in itself. We'll talk about that at a later date. Now, there are lots of elements to this movie which would be borrowed repeatedly for Elvis movies until it became an Elvis Presley formula. One such thing is the fight that Elvis has in a diner with another young man who tries to pressurize him into singing. Elvis does the song for him. And then asks the young man what he does for a living, and the guy says he's like a mechanic, a fitter, a tyre fitter. So Elvis tells him to go outside and change a wheel on his car because he usually gets paid for singing. He's just sung for him, so now you could do something for me, and it starts up this fight. The guy's girlfriend is watching on, and the performance she gives, no doubt directed by Al Cantar, the director, to bring this into her expression. She's looking at Elvis, and you can see them two men fighting over her is doing something to her. She's creaming in knickers. And later on she breaks into Elvis's or Deke Rivers's dressing room, and I can only think of it at this stage as Miss Creamy Knickers, and Elvis has to throw her out. She is absolutely obsessed with him. His performance, the sexuality of Elvis's performance as brought on an obsession with the young lady. Overall, Loving You is an excellent movie. It's one of the better Elvis Presley movies. As I say, this was shot in colour, whereas the next movie, J-Lo's Rock, was black and white, as was the fourth movie, King Creole, black and white. Now, the reason for this, it's not clear, but Loving You was designed as an Elvis Presley vehicle, as opposed to Love Me Tender, the previous movie. Love Me Tender had a massive success on what it cost to make, and so the studios decided that they would opt for colour. And Elvis does pop on screen in colour. He's wearing, in the early parts of the movie, he's dressed all in denim jeans, denim shirt, and he looks absolutely superb. One of the sexiest men on the planet, which or at least if not the sexiest, then definitely the coolest man on the planet, which he probably was during that period. It's a great film. It's very formulaic, but then the formula hadn't been invented then, so rather than call it formulaic, you can say it's setting out the formula. So Elvis is discovered. He's a poor boy. He's discovered for his talent. He starts performing, he rises up in fame, he starts to get disillusioned with his fame and leaves, runs away, only to be brought back at the end for a triumphant performance, which is going to be televised in the movie to make him this big nationwide star. In that last performance, in the audience is Gladys Presley, Elvis's real-life mum. And this captures her in a brief moment where she was more proud and delighted about her son's success and fame rather than the anxiety that it brought her later on before she passed away at an untimely age. And the fact that Gladys appears in this reportedly meant that after she died, Elvis never watched this movie again. But Loving You is a damn fine Elvis Presley movie. It's great, the musical performances are excellent, it's well directed, it's well acted, all of the cast are superb. Elizabeth Scott playing Glenda, of course. The Colonel Tom Parkerish manager is absolutely excellent in her role. It really is a great movie. Now, I've got my own rating system for these Elvis movies, which I'm going to give every movie, and that's based on a dram, because I'm always drinking a dram when I'm doing these videos. And so, Loving You, from 1957, directed by Al Cantor, and Elvis Presley's second movie, I'm going to give a solid 4 dram rating. That makes it a quality, top shelf single malt. So come back soon. The next film we'll be talking about is Jailhouse Rock, Elvis's third movie. And please give this video a thumbs up. Leave a comment below. Have you seen Loving You? Where does it stand in your own opinion of Elvis Presley movies? And if you haven't subscribed to this channel, then please do so. It doesn't cost anything. It's free, and it will help this channel grow. See you soon on the Tainted Tavern. Bye for now.